First of all, welcome to Beit Horon. This community is first mentioned in the book of Joshua, and this is what's on the path of the forefather. This is the actual path of the forefathers from the time of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. If you look down the road here inside of the villages, we'll see it better a little bit further when we get in further. But there's two what's called the paths of the forefathers. There's this one, which is called the sea path, and there's the one to the east of here, which is called the mountain path. And what you're seeing around you is the Judean mountains. This is a communal community. It's religiously observant on the Sabbath and on the holidays, but it's a mixed community because we very much believe in the unity of the Jewish people. My husband and I, my name is Jehudit Tayar, we came here 34 years ago as a very young couple, and for 10 years we lived in caravans down by the army base with no water and no electricity, but with the knowledge that we came back to this community to rebuild it. And it's wonderful. Then we were maybe 12 families. Today we have 3 generations living here and about 400 families, thank God. The place that we're standing right here is a special memorial for our loved ones that fell in battle in the Second Lebanese War. They were from the Golani Brigade. 8 of them fell. This is the menorah, like for the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah. And the 8 names are here on this special menorah, Chanukiah we call it. And each of these 8 soldiers from the Golani Brigade fell trying to save their brothers in arms. They were from this community and communities near here. One of them, Ohad Klausner, grew up with my sons. And this is the symbol of the Golani Brigade, the oak tree. And from here on the Festival of Lights, there's a race from here to the north, to the Golani Junction, in their memory and in honor of all of our soldiers that fight for our country. And we remember them and we love them, and we're grateful that we can stand here and not only remember them, but to continue to fight for our country. And what we see around us is the mountains of Judea. And down there, the houses you see is Modi'in, the city of Modi'in. And now we'll go to another place where you can see even clearer, literally the path of the forefathers. The wall, by the way, that we see, this horrible wall that is behind you, was put up after many terror attacks here in order to prevent the terrorists from penetrating the community and murdering us. Although I'm a family of victims of terror, my family were murdered by terrorists in Hebron. It's going to be 12 years. As an emergency medic, I'm called into the Arab villages here to save Arab lives, and that's okay, because I believe in love and not in hate. And if I fill myself with hate like the Arabs do, that murder us only because we're Jewish, then it's against what we believe in. We believe that the Lord of Israel is about love. And although I lost family through murder, through terrorism, it was the same family that kidnapped and murdered our children this last summer from Hebron, the Kawasmi family. And my family were in their homes on Friday night, Rabbi and his wife, my cousins, and they were murdered in their home. Why? Because they're Jewish. And we hate this fence, but this fence prevents terrorists from coming in and killing us and our children. And as I said, I made a promise. I'm going to fill myself with love. I'm a religious girl, and I won't let their hate change me. Yes, I will go and save Arab lives too, because that is what the Lord of Israel is about, to remember that a human life is the most important thing. The whole area here was full of bunkers and trenches by the Jordanian army that would fire down into Tel Aviv from this mountain. And we'll see a few more here. And thank God now we have houses and families and children and dogs and cats. You see the Arab village here? And you see the road going through the Arab village? That road is originally the path of the forefathers, where our forefathers, our fathers, Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, came from Nablus, from Shechem, up here to this area, to Jerusalem, to Hebron. This was actually, now it's paved, but it was the real path of the forefathers, because we traveled with our sheep, with our goats, the Jewish people from the north to the south, from Nablus, which is just north of here, on this road and another road that's just to the east of us, to get to Jerusalem, to Hebron, to Bethlehem. And this is actually the road. The Arab village here is called after this community because from 1948 to 1967, no Jews were allowed to live in this area up until when we liberated this area in the 1967 war. But even so, this village and the one beyond it are named for Beit Horon. They're called Upper and Lower Beit Horon, Beit Fuka, Beit Tachta in Arabic, after this community that was here in the time of Joshua, in the time of the Bible. And what we're looking at here now is the mountains of Judea. And you can see we're very high up. We're about 800 meters above sea level. On a clear day over to the west, we can see Gaza and Ashdod because we're very, very high. Today it's not a clear day because it is February and it's rainy. You know, it's winter. But here underneath us are the villages. Beyond us is the city of Modi'in. If we look over here, you see a forest and you see other villages. And there's Jewish communities there. There's Dolev, there's Talmon. The mountain up here that we see is a Jewish community called Jabal Harasha, the Mount of Harasha. And just beyond that is Ramallah. And the road, we can walk down if you want for a minute to see the road that was built for the Arab traffic. Jews are not allowed on that, even though if I want to go to these communities that are here, I have to go all the way around 45 minutes instead of 15 minutes on this road that was built only for the Arabs. When we first came back to this community, and yes, we came back to rebuild this community that was first here in the time of the Bible, it was empty. No trees, no plants, no flowers. And then we didn't have water, so we planted it by hand and watered it by hand. And now when you look, just in my garden, we have lemon trees and apple trees and orange tree and olive trees. And if you look around and you see the trees, and it's such a blessing of the Lord. And we feel so grateful to God that we're here. And my husband and I here, just in this community, have now 3 generations because one of our daughters lives here with 2 little boys and her husband. And another daughter lives in a community not far from here. Another one lives in the north, and another one lives in Beersheba. This, unfortunately, this is like a stadium. When we have on Independence Day or on a holiday, we have the community sit here and performances of the school, and it's you see the broken stone there. It's called Matat's Lookout. Matat was one of our young girls here that was murdered in a terrorist attack 10 years ago on the way home to her husband in Carmel in the southern Hebron Hills. She grew up here. Her family's house is the house right here. And she was, Matat in Hebrew means present, and she was a present. She was a very special, loving young girl. She had been married a few months before she was murdered with her cousin while they were waiting for a ride home. It was right before the evening of the Feast of Tabernacles 10 years ago. And this lookout is in her memory, and to continue her love and to continue the love that she had for our people and for our country and, of course, for our Lord. And here is, of course, the history that I told you about, the story of the Jews here during the time it's mentioned in Joshua. The battles of the Maccabee freedom fighters against the Greeks was here on this road. The major battles of Judah Maccabee were here in Beit Horon. It has to be about love, because that's why we're here in our land, for the love of the Lord, the love of our Torah, and the love of our land. And here we have another bunker from the time of the Jordanians, where this was all bunkers and trenches, and this is where they used to shoot down into Tel Aviv from this mountain up until 1967, when this area was liberated. And what we see underneath us is a road that was built specifically to allow the Arabs from the villages under the Palestinian Authority to be able to freely travel without any problem. And this road, as I said, if I would go on this road to the communities that are very close to here, to Dolev, to Neria, it would take me 15 minutes. But because I'm Jewish, I'm Israeli, I have to go all the way around. I'm not allowed on their road. And it takes me 45 minutes. And up above us, on this mountain, a few years ago was uncovered a whole village from the time of the Second Temple, with houses and mikvaot, it's the ritual baths and everything, right on this mountain behind the trees here. And these are olive trees. And it's beautiful to see the forests and the trees and everything. And this is only since we've come back. And up until the Oslo agreements, we used to have a connection with our neighbors now that lived here, the Arabs. But since then, they're very frightened because the so-called leadership of the Palestinian Authority, the Hamas, the Jihad, all of these organizations warned them not to be in touch with us or they will be killed. And they used to come for coffee. We used to come for, when we had water come, they would come to take the water. And here you can see, unfortunately, because of the terror, you see on the fence here, there's numbers. This is a security fence. We have a patrol, we have emergency teams. I'm part of the emergency team, the security and emergency medical team. And the fences are numbered because, God forbid, when we've had terrorists try to come in, we close off the area and secure it and say, it's from number 24 to, say, 26, to close off the area and search where the terrorists are. So my house is just down here, and next to my house is my ambulance, and I serve as a emergency medic. And so in my car, when we get down to where you picked me up, I have all of the equipment in my car because many times, whether it's an accident or somebody falls or, God forbid, there's a terror incident, I have equipment in my car until I can get an ambulance to save lives. Because we say in emergency medicine, time is life. That there's called the golden hour, the 60 minutes that really determine if a person's going to live or die. So I always have emergency equipment with me, and this tells me if I'm called out or not, this beeper, if it's the army or if it's for the ambulance. And please God, we should only do good. So this is the main synagogue. We have 4 other ones. As I said, this is a religious community. But it's mixed because there's families that are less observant that drive on Shabbat. But inside of the community, there's no driving or anything except if I'm in an emergency or, military on Shabbat or on a holiday. And come, we can go see the inside. What would be the excuse if we are taking care of them medically, if we're taking care of them and they have roads and they have everything from us? What would be the excuse of them coming in and murdering Jews in a synagogue? Or like in my family's home, they came in on Friday night and murdered them. My friend's family, they went into Itamar and they murdered the father, the mother, and then they went back to, even after they murdered 2 of the children, to murder the little infant 3 months old. So what would be the excuse for murder if they don't blame us for something? But I'm going to tell you a true story because everything I'm saying is true and you can check it. We were called out in an emergency about 1.5 years ago. We were called out in a lot of them. This was a special one. It was a van packed with Arab young men that wanted to find work inside of Israel. It was on what we call Simchat Torah, on the Festival of the Torah. I was called out with my beeper from the synagogue, got in the ambulance. I was the first ambulance there. Somebody had put 23 young Arab men that did not have permits to come into Israel in this van. They came down to the checkpoint with the army. They saw it. They turned around. The van turned over 3 times. I was the first ambulance. 2 were dead already when I got there, and 1 died. I couldn't save him, but I took 3 in my ambulance to Ein Karam Hospital in Jerusalem. One of them was a 23-and-a-half-year-old young man from an Arab, these are all Arabs, from Kalkilia, which is under the Palestinian Authority. From the accident, his right arm was cut off here, his left arm was cut off here. I was stabilizing him, and he says, "No," in Arabic, "No, let me die." And I said, "Mahmoud, what are you talking about? You have a family? He says, yes, I have 2 babies. But if I live, you're going to take me to the hospital in Jerusalem. You're going to save me. I go back to Kalkilia. I won't have work. Nobody will pay me anything. If I die here, I will be called a martyr and my family will be paid. I couldn't leave him in emergency in the hospital. I said, no, you have to live. Let me call your family. Let me tell, and this was a holiday, and I'm religious. Let me call them and tell them, you have to talk to them. You have to want to live. He said, you don't understand. If I live, my family suffers. If I die, then they martyrize me and my family gets money. And this is what the world is ignoring. And I'm going to give you a copy of my latest blog. I have a blog on Israel National News in English about the payments for terrorists that are given by the United States and by the other countries. And the Palestinian Authority, heads of the Palestinian Authority, including President Abbas, goes through the file, and the more victims, Jewish victims, the more pain and the more suffering and the more horrible the terror attack, the more money the terrorist, or if he's dead, his family gets. Millions of dollars every year. And nobody talks about this because it's so much easier to say, well, if there wasn't Israeli conquest, why was my family murdered in the 1920s? Why was my family murdered in the 1930s in the Galilee? There was no state of Israel then. Why does an Arab want to come in and slaughter a family when they're sleeping in their homes or in a synagogue when they're praying? When only since we're here in our country as a state of Israel do they really have freedom of worship. Hebron, the Cave of the Patriarchs, which is really one of the most holy places aside from the Temple Mount, is open for the Arab prayer. There's mosques all over the place. But I'm not allowed to pray as a Jew? So they say, no, it's because they go up to the Temple Mount. But the Temple Mount didn't belong to Islam. The Temple Mount was bought by us, by our people in the time of the Bible, for the Jewish people, for a place to pray to God, the God of Israel. Do I mind them praying there? No, but don't forbid me to go up there and pray because it's a Jewish monument. It's a Jewish place of prayer for the Lord of Israel. And that's what's so painful to me, that the world blinds itself to the truth and points an accusing finger even at our soldiers. One of my sons was injured going in after a terrorist near Hebron because the terrorists take innocent Arabs, hide behind them in their homes, knowing that the Israeli soldiers are not going to bomb like the Americans do. They're going to go in and they'll be able to kill or hurt the soldiers. So one of our sons was very badly injured going in after a terrorist who was hiding in a home near Hebron a few years ago. Thank God he's okay. But do they talk about this? How we are willing to expose ourselves to dangers to try and save innocent lives? No. The world ignores this. And then there's the United Nations, which should be closed because there's a special committee for acts against humanity. It's not convened about anybody except against Israel. But we have a saying that the eternal nation is not afraid of a long way. And we know that we're in the right way. And every morning when I pray the morning prayer, I put in money for charity and I speak to God that he blesses us, please, dear God, with leadership that protects his name, our Torah, our land, and our people, and that we be deserving to be messengers in his name. I always say it's like a mosaic. You know, each piece is different, but if they don't all fit together, you can't fix the mosaic. And that's what people are. Nobody is, even if you have the same recipe for a cake and you make it 100 times, sometimes it's different. And people are different, and we have to love one another. And that's why we chose this community. And we're very, very grateful to live here. And the historical importance, too, that my family, as I said, they were from Tzvat, from Safed, you call it in English. They came to Israel in the 1820s to Safed. And I grew up on the stories of, and when I was little, many of my family had been murdered in the pogroms, in the 1920s and 1930s. Then, when the reporters came, when we first came here, because I do 3 different things. I do security, rescue, and I'm one of our spokespeople. And when the reporters came to ask, well, this is so dangerous, how can you come here and you have a baby? And I said, let me tell you the story of my great-grandfather, Rabbi Levi. Many of our family and many of the people in Tzfat, in Tiberias, in Hebron, and in Jerusalem were murdered in the 20s. Why? There was a state of Israel? No. But because we were Jewish, our neighbors murdered us, which we see today all over the world. And the people of Tzfat, Safed in Hebrew Tzfat, came to the 3 rabbis. One of them was my great-grandfather, Rabbi Levi, and they said, please, let's move from Tzfat from the Galilee to Hebron where it's safer. And he said, no, we will teach those who hate us that we are here to stay. And I said to the reporters back then, this is 34 years ago, we were living in a little caravan, 34 square meters with no water, electricity. And I said, do you realize I was born after the state of Israel? I am a commander in the Israeli army. I can fight for my country. My children were able to fight for their country because we have a country here, and not only for us is it important. It's important not only for Jews all over the world, but for those who believe in freedom of worship and freedom of life. And that's what we believe in. And we could have thrown all the Arabs out when we established the state, but no. I said, even today, back then, I said, our neighbors from the Arab villages come here when we get water, and they take water, and it's fine. And to respect human life is very, very important. And thank God we're able to do that.